Ramon, I came across an article from the Daily Friend. You remember that publication that fact checked us and wrote a hit piece against us? Anyway, this article basically claims, please understand, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't my view, this is the view of the article, but it basically claims that blacks are dumb and whites are dumb for not understanding that blacks are dumb. And if we all just dumbed ourselves down and we were all just stupid together, we could probably fix the country.
So the premise of the article is that you got two different mindsets. You got the black mindset, which is based on 350 years of oppression, and then you got the white mindset, which thinks that it is superior to blacks. Now, this is not something that we share. We have friends of all racial groups. We are civic nationalists, South African nationalists, and we think everyone in this country can actually fix the country together in a very non-racial way. But according to the article, the mindset of racial superiority of whites has made the ANC not trust whites, even though it needs them to fix the country. So therefore, South Africa is going to be a failed state because there is no trust between the racial groups. The problem is, racial groups get along very well if you don't read News 24.
Well, I'm going to disagree with that to a degree and just say that if you read TikTok, then race relations in this country is like terrible. We're all at a civil war. And every time you step out your house, like some guy's going, kill the whitey, and he's, running an assegai at you or something. But, I must say that actually when I leave my own home, actually the country is just fine and we all get along just dandy. But the article basically makes a claim that in 94, what typically tended to happen, according to this article, was that the white people came out and basically said blacks should uplift themselves to be more like us. And the blacks were like, no, we don't want to. We want to be dumb. And then the whites stood there going, well, we're not going to be as dumb as you. You should be smart like us. And we created an impasse between each other. Again, this is what this article is basically saying. It's a very unique way of phrasing this stuff, mate. I'm terribly surprised this article got published.
It does state that whites are so glued to their conviction of racial superiority and moral superiority that essentially they want the country to fail. What else can we expect from blacks, right? This is what this guy is saying about most white attitudes in this particular country. But as I keep saying, if you switch off the news and you only watch Morning Shot as your news source, the most trusted news source in the country, and you just speak to your colleagues and you just speak to the average person, race relations are perfectly fine in this country. The essential problem why we're going to have a failed state is because the ANC is dumb and the ANC is overtly socialist and the ANC don't know how to run a modern economy. That's the essential problem. Is it because they're black? No, it's because they're commies. Ineffective commies at that. And communism has failed all over the place. If Stalin couldn't do it, what makes you think bloody Thabo Mbeki can do it?
Cyril Ramaphosa is very much a communist. And he said so by his own words. He says, I'm a socialist. And actually, he's adopted every single radical socialist policy you could possibly think of since coming to office. And it's not working out terribly well for us, regardless of how you look at it. Now, the article does kind of try a hit there, and it does actually say, the problem is that, and I'm going to quote, it says, the whites will carry on mindlessly blaming them, meaning the blacks, for every government failure, and the ANC will continue stumbling down its yellow brick road to socialist utopia. So then what the hell's the mindsets of the black people and the white people got to do with it? It's the ANC stumbling down the yellow brick road to socialist utopia. I mean, that's the problem. In fact, one of the leading thinkers at the IRR and the Daily Friend is Anthea Jeffries, and she wrote a whole book on this called Countdown to Socialism. So it's not like it's a hidden secret in the IRR that one of the deepest problems with the ANC actually has very little to do with their genetics, actually has quite a lot to do with their politics.
Well, I mean, the clue is in the final sentence, which says the country will eventually fail simply because of inherent human foolishness. To be frank, sheer human stupidity, which clearly afflicts blacks and whites equally. I still don't think that's correct. I mean, again, we travel over this country, we make documentaries all over the country, we have spoken to politicians who are of every race under the sun. We like Gator McKenzie because he's right-wing. We like Kenneth Meshwe from the ACTP because he's right-wing. We don't like Homer Mashaba because we don't rate him very highly, but he is relatively right-wing as well. The problem is socialism of the elites, not the average person in the streets. That's a good poem, actually. I should write it down. So This article is trying to create a case that doesn't exist. It's creating a scenario that doesn't exist in reality. If you use the term elite of South Africa, then I would agree. But just
Yeah,
for normal South Africa, it's so far removed from what he is describing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. I mean, if he was talking about the elites of the civil service, maybe he might have a point. You know, if we're talking about the deep state, maybe. But I've got to say, you know, racial superiority is actually one of those problematic concepts. When it comes through to whites, do we have racial superiority when it comes through to Western Adam Smith economic theory, Protestants belief, you know, possibly even some Catholic belief, and maybe a little bit of you know, John Locke's philosophy there in terms of politics? Well, yes, because those are all deeply European ideas. Do we have superiority when it comes through to African tribalism and creating a family on the veldt and being able to share communal land? Well, no, we really don't, because that's not our philosophy. We didn't come from that. So do we have superiority from those cultural areas? Yes. But then they have superiority from that culture area. See how this works? It's kind of like if you don't treat all humans like they're the same, and how everybody just naturally has the same idea, and everybody should all be judged on the framework of, you know, progressive liberalism. If you actually allow people to have their own independent groups, then it actually makes it far more difficult to judge things based on superiority.
I have to use, unfortunately, a term from apartheid, which is separate but equal, which I'm not an apartheid supporter. But I sent you a quote over the course of the weekend by a French philosopher who is someone I like a lot. He's very conservative, very right-wing. Some have called him fascist. And he says the modern right-wing aphorism, so to speak, is that right-wingers understand that there is natural diversity in the world in terms of people, and that there are natural unequal consequences from that diversity. If you accept that, you are essentially right-wing. If you try to homogenize that in a progressive manner, assume everyone's the same and everyone wants the same thing, and you sort of kill off the nuances between different groups of people, you are a liberal progressive, which is something that we are not, and something that we are against, actually. This article seems to me like it's an attempt to say that everyone should be the same in a liberal progressive way, and then we'll actually get to fix South Africa. Whereas I think if we actually are deemed to be separate but equal, and we help each other despite our differences, that will actually fix South Africa to a far greater extent, because we're not trying to change people whatsoever. We're just relying on the strength of different groups.
Yeah, I think you're correct. I think if we actually all recognize that, you know, everybody in the country actually has their own differences, and we don't try make everybody the same. If we actually allow Afrikaners to be Afrikaners, Anglos to be Anglos, and Zulus to be Zulus, Xhosa to be Xhosa, and we all figure out how to actually live side by side in our own communities next to each other and learn from each other what we can, rather than making everybody some relativistic, like bland, grey model of a human being, I think we're actually far more likely to be successful than we are right now. I think the biggest problem with some of the liberals, as we all know, is that they just think human beings are reducible to nothing more than their carbon footprint, that they're all just like grey individuals, and somehow they all just believe in the same stuff. And somehow if we all just, you know, get along and make ourselves as grey and as bland and as boring as possible and consume the product, that everything will be hunky-dory. And, you know, the biggest problem they see in the country is that we're not all like that. And if only we were all like that, then everything would fix itself.